Hello, all, and welcome to the Mental Podcast Series with me, your host, Matthew Ashford. The Mental Podcast Series aims to shed light on the mental side of competing by speaking to the athletes, players, and coaches who live and breathe that experience themselves. So, without any further ado, I want to introduce you to this week's guest. So on the podcast, we have NoName. NoName is a highly experienced professional League of Legends player from England who has been competing on the competitive scene for 5 years and across 14 teams spanning France, England, Spain, and Turkey. Her name currently is the jungler for Rambo Club in the Superliga Dominoes League in Spain, and so continues to have an impressive longevity in the esports scene himself. Without any further ado, welcome to the podcast, No Name.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I always ask everyone this first question to start off the podcast, but maybe talk about your journey into becoming a professional player, because a lot of young aspiring players all want to become professional esports athletes. So, what was your journey from amateur to professional?
Yeah, well, the very beginning all started just from playing solo queue, and I happened to bump into a fellow pro UK esports player who's retired now, but his name is Soph. He used to play in the UK league. He's made it to the EMEA Masters, and I just happened to run into him in solo queue and added him as a friend after the game and started chatting a bit. And because I had no idea how to get into the pro scene myself, and I had always really wanted to, um, and he just through his contacts, since he had already been involved, he just got me into this tiny little UK tournament and then got me involved in the scene, and that was my first ever taste of it, really. Um, and since then, it just kind of snowballed. Once you're in the scene, you make connections, I guess, and obviously, if you keep playing solo queue, you'll be recognized on the ladder. So from there, it just snowballed from small little UK tournaments, then eventually joining an actual team in the UK league. I think back then it was called the UKLC or the UKEL at first. Then eventually I got offered to join a team in the Spanish second division, which I would say was my first real semi-pro opportunity. That team was a 1 year contract where we ended up winning the second division and promoting the team into the first division. And then from there, that's where I say um, I started my more pro career playing in the Spanish league and playing in the Turkish league since then.
Mm. Yeah, it's a real rise for the leagues, isn't there? But it's an
Yeah,
interesting start into it because it was through connections, right? So you had a
yeah,
friend who was competing, and so did you not at the time? Did you not know like how to get into the competitive league? Like what was the way into these tournaments?
yeah. I always had this feeling that I wanted to become a professional player, even when I wasn't particularly good enough to be one, but I just had no idea how I would possibly get into it. Um, so the stars really aligned for me there. But if I was to say now to give some advice, I think it would just to be get on Twitter and just find people within the esports scene that could possibly help you out. But back then, I literally just had no idea where to start. But Twitter is where everything is.
Yeah, well, I'm sure like 5 years ago, Twitter wasn't probably even the place to go, was it back then?
No, yeah.
It wasn't as big as it is now. Um, so even now, though, if a player was in like your shoes when they were younger, the best that's still that you'd still see that as the best way to get in to the professional scene is by like contacting people in the scene. How come is that?
Hmm. I just feel like if no one really knows you, then you don't really have much of a chance. That there's, I guess there's two ways. One being so high rank that people can't really look away from you, and then everyone's gonna know who you are at some point. And then the second way is just to advertise yourself on social media, which for some reason everyone in the esports industry uses Twitter or X. So yeah, that's it's just the way it goes, really.
Yeah, and when you contact someone in the scene, how do they give you opportunities? Is it like vouching for you to certain people, like, oh, I trust this guy, like he's
Mm,
good, or
Is I would say it's just similar to friendship in real life. Just you, maybe you'll find someone who's from the same country as you, so you have a bit more of a connection, or someone who's a similar age, or someone who's a similar rank to you. But you need to find someone who actually has their foot in the door already, because then they can help you get in there too. Um, and then I'm sure like everyone's nice enough where they just try to help you out because there's no reason not to, really.
Mm. And did that get you a trial, I guess? 'Cause I guess you still want to go in and prove yourself, right? So can you
Yeah.
remember that first game you had where you made the connection? You're like, oh my God, I'm playing an actual competitive match for the first time.
Um, well, yeah, I remember, I think I was 16 then. Uh, It was the first ever mini UK tournament I was playing, and just I think I didn't really have to do too much. Just the fact that I was this certain rank on the ladder while being 16 on from the UK was just already enough for some UK teams to be interested in me, because um, there's not too many players, particularly from the UK.
Mm. All right. But, I mean, back to like your motivation to get to become a competitive player. So that was always, so you said even when you weren't as good as you are now, you were still driven to want to be one. So how early on in your career as a league player did you actually think, right, I want to start playing competitively and going pro?
Um, I can't pinpoint the exact age, but I have a vivid memory from, I think I was around platinum in league, which is definitely not good enough to become a pro player, just a bit more of a casual rank. And I was on a dog walk with my mum, and I remember saying that I wanted to become pro in league, even though I was nowhere near. It's hard to know how old I would have been, maybe around 14 or so, I'd say. Um, but yeah, since then I just um, really knew that that's what I wanted to do.
What was your mum's response to that when you asked her, well, you said to her,
Mm.
actually, you know what, I've got ambitions here to play the game competitively.
I can't remember exactly what she said, but I just know I've had support the whole time, so I'm sure it would have been the same back then.
Did you mention that you want to have a career, or did you just mention I want to play in tournaments?
Uh, well, I don't really know if I knew what I was talking about, to be honest, back then. I probably would have just said I wanted to become a pro, and probably to
Yeah,
her that didn't mean anything either, because she had no idea what it all was. So yeah, I
yeah,
think I just said I wanted to become a pro player, and then I don't know what that meant to her, but to me, that would have meant it becoming my career.
yeah. Nice. No, nice that you always had a direction and like sense where you wanted to go, right? And then
Yeah,
so you played in the lower leagues and the tournaments in the UK, right? And you kind of gradually built yourself up. And it sounded like the breakthrough season was that year in the second division in Spain.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, it'd be great to talk about that year. How did you find that transition to um, getting to the division? Well, getting promoted, and then how did things change for you as a player from there?
Well, it was a bit of a tricky year. The whole year in that second division, I feel like it was one of my favorite times playing, because we were just a team of full rookies that had never really managed to achieve anything, and we were going against like super teams that were made to specifically promote into the first division, and then we ended up beating them out after the full year of like training. It's like a training arc in anime where we were building up over time, and we managed to beat them at the final hurdle. Um, but after we did promote, I had some issues with the visa um, getting into a Spanish team due to Brexit happening just around that time, or it happened a bit before, but it meant the process for me to actually join a Spanish team was much trickier. So I didn't get the opportunity the very first time after we promoted. It took
Mm.
me a couple months afterwards where I'd finally get the opportunity to play in the first division.
Yeah, it's Brexit. I think ruined a lot of things for a lot of people, and absolutely, when you come off a hot season, you just want to carry on, don't you, and keep the momentum
Yeah,
going. That was at Guadalajara. Was that how to spell the
yeah,
name?
Grassones, yeah,
Guadalajara, yeah. And so you were four rookies, right? So that would be a really good season to talk about split, right? Because you're four rookies, so you massively overachieved, really, given that you're against, like, say, some super teams, right?
yeah.
And at that time, you were living over in Spain.
Um, well, during that time, we were. playing mostly from home, but there was multiple times throughout the year where we went to Spain. Um,
Mm.
we went first for a media day. I think that was just a couple days getting photos, and then we came back. Then we went up. It's hard for me to remember exactly which point, but I think we went up for 3 weeks at one point. Doing a boot camp during the final split of that team. We had a little office that they had rented for us, and then we were staying in the actual owner's house. His 3-story house in Pamplona in Spain. We were all of us players and the coach were living in that house with him there as well.
So for people who maybe don't, participate in esports, understand much about esports, going and competing in a gaming house or going and living there is quite a big deal for an esports player.
Yeah.
It's very much a different reality to playing online. And obviously you were having a good season as well. So maybe talk us through like a couple of things about that season. One, what do you think it was that gave you the edge as a team in that season? Can you think of anything mentally that the team were doing very well? Because you were 4 rookies, which were inexperienced. So it's incredible that you got promotion. And was there anything that you experienced at the gaming house, which you think actually supported you guys to perform at your best?
Yeah, well, we just all got on, I would say. I think that's one of the most important things. And throughout the year, we all had the exact same goal. We were all good enough to achieve the goal, and we all were just so happy to be spending the time with each other, I'd say.
Mm.
Specifically in the gaming house, we were all, well, it wasn't necessarily a gaming house, it was our owner's actual home, but we we were all spending a lot of time together. He had a pool that we used and a gym that we used together. We were just spending such like almost 24 hours of the day together, and I don't remember a single argument or issue that any of us really ever had with each other. And since it was all I'd like to say it was all of our first-hand real experience in this stuff. I feel like we were all just experiencing a new thing together and doing what we loved and wanted to do, and it was just all coming together in the game as well because of it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, it sounded like everyone had a real appreciation for that opportunity to play,
Yeah,
right? And you were all trying to make the most of it while you were there. And how important is that, the relationships in a house then? Because I've been around a few teams that have gone to gaming houses, and that my experience those teams would support that idea that the relationships is central to a positive experience in those houses. So how important was that for
yeah.
you?
Um, well, I think the relationship you have with your teammates is m- one of, if not the most important factor that you can have within a team. The fact that you just want to talk to them more is kind of everything because being a pro gamer doesn't just stop after you play or practice with your team. You have to be constantly talking with them about specific things, and the more conversations you have with your teammates outside of your normal practices, like that's when the small differences will be made that can separate the the top teams. Um,
Mm.
if you just play your scrims together and then you don't talk to each other again, there's going to be so many small little things that you haven't considered or spoke about with each other. And then when it comes to the actual game, you just won't be on the exact same page. And I think you don't have these conversations or talk about the game unless you're one passionate about the game and two actually enjoy being with each other.
Mm. Yeah, like you're saying, like if you enjoy being with each other, you're more willing to talk about the game, aren't you? And so, do you
Yeah,
think that's what actually makes the difference? Do you think at the highest level is that it's the teams that actually don't just talk in scrims and stuff, but actually spend that time sort of offline, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
I'd say it's necessary at the highest level specifically because it's what everyone else kind of is doing, and if you're not doing it, then you're falling behind at the very top level. Um,
mm,
and I think that the teams that do it, they just have the natural advantage because there's plenty of players that are talented. There's no lack of talent, I'd say. There's a lot of people who can compete with at the top, but to have the to have five of those people that actually are happy to spend time with each other and keep talking about the game outside of their usual practice, that's what really separates a team who are also talented but don't have the same connection.
Mm. Yeah, like you say, it's like you say that extra bit of work that goes in for the team. And what sort of conversations would be going on outside of it? Is it the same ones you'd be having in training, or are they any different?
Well, it can depend really, just from casually watching the top leagues like the Korean leagues or the Chinese leagues and saying, "Well, what do you think about this?" Or it's literally just any small conversation because as well as being a professional gamer, like the game is also your passion as well as your career. So you'll naturally be watching these games anyway, and then maybe it's literally just like talking with your friends about the Premier League football or something. But then you are also a pro, so you can add the things that they're doing into your game. So it doesn't have to even be anything big, just the smallest of changes can result in massive differences.
Yeah. And is it like, so when you've had those conversations, when you get the training, everyone sort of, you've already mentioned those things. So one, you're kind of making training more efficient because you just get straight to it. Like, oh, we had a chat earlier in the day. Like, should we try this out now in training?
Yeah, exactly like that. And maybe you had this chat with only one of your teammates, and then you have to explain it a bit more to everyone. But also, maybe not everyone needs to know exactly your thing because it doesn't involve them. But yeah, it definitely does tend to make things more efficient because you're just constantly thinking about the game and being together as a team.
Mm. Yeah. And you mentioned about all team pulling in the same direction again, right? And you've been across, I think, 14 teams, right? So you've got an immense amount of experience around good team dynamics and what creates a high performing team. And there's a lot of good things in that team there. When you say pulling in the right direction, what do you think that, or what do you expect teammates to show that would indicate to you that everyone was, pulling in the right direction and creating that sort of really good team environment?
I think it just comes down to having um, people around you that are also feeling the same way about the game as you. Um, they also are very grateful to be in the position they're in and they're very passionate about the game. Then I think things naturally fall into place from there because you're just sharing one big common interest, which is also your career. So I think that tends to make people um, just that's just I would say a recipe for a friendship or just a good connection.
Hmm. Do you think that common ground is really essential? Like, how have you found it the other way, where players, if you've got those players who are like, they'll care about the game when they've turned it on, but like the second the
Yeah.
computer's off, they're like, getting on with the rest of their life. Like,
Mm. Well, I wouldn't say I've necessarily played with too many people like that because I just don't think you have much of a chance in esports if that is the case. That's sort of a pro and a con. Like it has to become your life if you want to achieve anything. And that means automatically the people who aren't making it, their life will be weeded out, I'd say. I think especially for younger players or rookies, they're automatically just going to be fully involved. I'd say only it's with the players who are um, had more experience or been around longer that tend to try to separate their life balance a bit. But um, I don't think it really lasts. Uh, I think you have to keep yourself fully involved to keep going.
yeah, so you really have to commit 100% to really keep, because you've had a career of 5 years at the top, right? That's quite a lot of longevity for an esports athlete. So do you think it's not possible to have a career of that length if you're not, completely passionate about the game and thinking about it, not like day and night, but you know what I mean, quite close to that in some ways?
Yeah, I think well it there is a lot of factors. Maybe you're the most talented person in the world and you can make yourself a career by just setting playing um like 8 hours a day and then just not thinking about it at all because you're just so good. But I don't think you'll ever reach the top leagues in Europe or become the best player in the world doing that, no matter how talented you are, because there's people just putting in way more hours than you. But it's not to say you couldn't make a career just cruising like that if you're good enough, but I don't think um, a person like that would ever reach the top.
Yeah, but they'd have to be quite a special kind of case, wouldn't they, to be able to do that? So, I mean, that brings up a really good sort of dilemma in some ways, like, because on the one hand, there's this idea of sort of looking after your well-being, isn't there, and making sure you've sort of been able to take out time for yourself. But then, from being around esports, there's a lot of this talk about the grind culture, right? And you got to be grinding all the time. And so, how do you manage your own well-being and your own ability to deliver high performance and not burn out when you feel like the realities are that you do have to be that intense as a pro?
Yeah. Um, well, it is tricky because there's a lot of things that are limited when you are a esports player. For example, just even going on holidays with my family or my girlfriend or anything, that I have no idea when my time off is going to be because it just depends. Like time off is only when you lose and drop out of the season, really. So how can you predict when that's going to be? It's so hard to book things in advance, or it tends to be you only have one day off a week compared to most people having a full weekend. Things like
Mm,
this make it so your schedules don't align with people who aren't in the esports world, and it can make uh, just the work-life balance quite tricky to even accomplish. Especially even right now, where we're having such nice weather in the UK, it's hard to just want to be behind my computer all day when I'm sweating in my chair. I want to get outside and experience it all a bit, but um, then again, I won't be the best possible player if I do that. So it kind of has to be a bit of an obsession, and I'm sure there's points where people don't have as much motivation as others, and then you just have to work your way through it in whichever way you know, I'd say.
mm. And you know what? It'd be good. You know, there's a lot of debate in the professional football at the moment with that Club World Cup going on, and a lot of criticism of the top players not getting enough time off to recover and stuff. So for the audience, what is like a seasonal plan for you in terms of like how much do you compete throughout the year? How much time off do you get typically? You say you can't really predict it ahead of time, can you? But what's the sort of average for a
Yeah.
player at the top level?
Um, well, it's tricky to say to be honest because they've changed the landscape recently from being two long splits per year to now it's three slightly shorter ones. So in theory, I think there's a winter split from January to maybe March. I couldn't tell you the exact dates, but usually it's about one split is probably 3 months. So you have January to maybe March, and then you maybe have a month off. But then again, it all depends on if you're the first team out, then you'll probably have way more of a break than the teams that are competing all the way through. Because if you let's say you win your league, then you head up to another tournament to face teams from other leagues, and then that tournament keeps going on until you lose. So I would say if you're the very best team in the ecosystem and you're winning everything, then you probably are getting a couple weeks off after each split. Um, and then you don't even know exactly when those dates are going to be. So it's all very tricky to be honest. And for me, what I found is uh, it's not very common to just stay on the same team for the whole year, which then again adds more uncertainty. You have to do tryouts for other teams, and it's even harder to know when your time off will be because you don't have the set dates that would be um, as obvious as if you had one contract throughout the whole year.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that because in theory, like if you're with one team, right, and you've got a contract, then at least you can sort of get those time. But if you're having to constantly like find teams, right, that time that you would have off, I guess that gets eaten into by
Yeah.
going and looking for teams.
Yeah, I think the the goal in esports would be to just have a year-long contract, and then it makes things so much easier because if you have a year-long contract, you know for one year you're going to be in this league, and then this league operates between these dates, so you know these dates you'll have off, and then you don't have to worry about looking for another team in between that. Um, but I think the industry is just not formed fully yet, so it's all a bit all over the place still.
Yeah. And for anyone who doesn't realize as well that in professional sport, you've got much longer contracts. So, I worked in like an academy where, okay, players were, year, 2 year contracts, have to prove themselves to move up to the age groups. But so that's a little less. As a professional player, you might get 3, 4 year contracts at clubs. But in esports, you were lucky to get 3 months sometimes,
Yeah.
weren't you? And then even that's dependent on performance levels, right?
Yeah, well, luckily things are improving, and I would say 3 months that's maybe if you're just starting out, because you also don't want to be stuck at a club that you're gonna improve faster than. Um, so the landscape is hard to compare to football, I'd say, because it's way less cemented yet. But the very top teams in Europe, they are starting to give players longer contracts. I think there's 3 year contracts that are going around, but um, the middle layer between the top and the second divisions, I guess, below the LEC, which is the very top league, I don't think there's ever any 2 year contracts there. It's maximum 1 year, and then there's always the chance that is very performance based and things like that.
Really. So if there was a players' union in league, right, what would you advocate for players in terms of that contractual safety in a team? Would there be an ideal
Uh,
amount? Would there be some changes you would like encourage to support players in terms of like, well-being, because then they're not having to fret and worry about their future so much and they can plan their time off. And I just think it makes being a pro a lot more of a comfortable experience.
yeah, well, I think there's just so much that needs to be improved on, really. I feel like contracts don't necessarily even feel like they're very useful, because there's been so many stories where players just don't get paid even if they have a contract, or um, they're just kicked off of their team with a contract in place and things like this. I I don't know if that's a necessarily easy fix, since that the European ecosystem spans hundreds of different countries, and then there's all these different laws that you have to abide by depending on where the organization is. But yeah, I mean, I would say that contracts definitely need to be a bit more useful. That's one of my first feelings. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I would also having uh, a bit more of an obvious calendar, that would make sense to me, because the esports calendar beneath LEC is just a bit all over the place, really. I mean, it makes sense when there's so many different leagues. There's a league for almost every country in Europe, but I think it needs to be a bit more structured in terms of when the time off is going to be and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think the contracts have to hold some weight, right? They have to be able to, you know, orgs have to be able to stick to those contracts. Otherwise, what's the point of writing them up? And absolutely on the planning, that shook me a bit because, yeah, like you say, right? Like you want to take time off with family, and if you can't plan that in, then you can't sync up your calendar with anyone else's. The reality as well, you mentioned of the obsessiveness, right? And you've been across 14 teams, so you've been a lot of teams, and you've managed to keep a career going for quite a long time. So, what is the key? What do you think is the secret to your motivation that keeps you going, despite, like you say, all these additional sacrifices that you do have to make around not always getting the time you want off and etc.
Yeah, well, I think it's just the fact that the day to day of being an esports player is just something that I enjoy and not many people will ever get to do. And I think I'm lucky that I have the chance to do it. If I would ever think about doing something else with my life, then I would have to compare it to this, and I have to think if the grass would actually be greener on the other side doing a 9 to 5 job that yeah, I've got no idea whether I'd enjoy it or not. And then that makes me that always gives me a bit of gratitude that I'm in esports, because probably I would not have as much enjoyment doing that as doing what I do now. So that is part of it. I just don't think there's anything that I could be doing that would make me happier.
Yeah. Is it that like fulfilling and meaningful for you being a player that it's sort of like anything else? If you weren't a gamer, like it wouldn't feel like it would compare very well.
So, yeah, I do think um, when you feel like you are being useful and you have fans supporting you and you're playing in a good league, I think that definitely brings a lot of fulfillment with that. Um, but there can also be the case of if you feel like you're a aspiring professional player and then you're kind of a bit lower down in the ranks, you haven't made your way up yet, there's not many people watching you, then it can also feel a bit pointless, like what is your role? You're just playing a video game, but there's no one watching you actually do it.
Hmm. Yeah, I was going to mention, where is it that you get your joy from, right? Because that might be a secret to performing at your best, isn't it? That you actually enjoy what you do. And there are probably many areas, but is one area the fans and knowing that you've got people behind you supporting you?
I think that definitely plays a big role, just having support from people, and that um the fandom and the popularity of the game, I'd say, is what generates the base fulfillment and gives it a reason to why you're playing. But for me, the actual enjoyment, I'd say, comes from the constant improvement that you need to do and the learning and striving to always improve and be the best. I think that's what gives me the actual enjoyment from the day to day. But if there wasn't anybody watching or any reason necessarily to play, then I feel like I wouldn't have any fulfillment from doing that.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Like you say, it's almost like if you get high up the levels, it almost becomes easier to sustain it because you got people watching and you take a lot of pride in like making other people happy because they're like more invested in how well you do. The joy there around improvement, to keep going for so long, like you say, to be able to be so intense with. I mean, how many hours a day would you say on average that you invest in your practice and trying to get better?
Yeah, well, when I'd say I'm in the middle of a season, probably 12 hours a day at least. Yeah.
God. So there you go. Okay, right. So 12 hours a day, right? And how many days a week would that be during the season that you'd be doing that?
Well, if I compare it to my most recent team in Turkey, then I was just playing all day, every day, pretty much. The only times I wouldn't be playing is um, gym, eating or sleeping, really. So that I think for me it depends. If I'm in a gaming house away from my friends, away from my family, then I don't have anything to do really except play. But if when I'm at home, there's a lot more going on, so I can have other things to do. Over the last off season, I haven't spent that much time playing because I've been catching up on just doing a lot of things with my friends and family and going outside a bit more. So that's nice to have a balance. But I think when you're in a different country away from everyone, then you don't have much to do then just completely grind, which is also something that I do enjoy. So it's like two different worlds, really.
I was going to say, out of those two worlds, obviously very different, which is easier for you? Is it the one where you get a bit more of a life balance, you can spend time with family and friends, or is it that one where you're in a game and house and you're just completely locked in with other people who are like-minded in that way?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I can really answer that question. It's more just in my life right now, I need both. Otherwise, that's just how it goes because I need time where I'm with my family and friends and just not doing as much of the grind. But then I need to get back into it to feel like I'm doing something and being useful. I think both of them go hand in hand, like a bit of a yin and yang, really.
Absolutely. Given that you put that much time into the game, what is it that you enjoy so much? Like specifically about being a jungler in League, what is it that like you imagine, yourself being able to do and be so good at that keeps you like wanting to pick up the mouse and play?
Um, Really, it's just there's always things you can be doing better, and no matter how hard you try or how much you're thinking about it, like you're always gonna be making mistakes that you can improve on. And I just think it's so interesting how deep the level of the game can go. I'm sure the developers didn't even mean to make it so complex as it is, but like, it's just such a complex game. Every game there's 5 characters per team with probably billions of different possible combinations of characters, and there's just too many variables that no game is ever remotely the same. Everything like this, it's just every game is so different, and there's always room for improvement, really.
So, if every game's so different, how do you improve on League? So, as a jungler, I guess other people might say like FPS games, same maps, like
Yeah.
or same sort of setups, but you say it's very variable and very complex.
Um, well, there is still fundamental parts of the game, even if there are many variables changing around them, which is really just what you have to stick to because when when you're on a team, a good coach is going to tell you things that you can improve on that you can actually take into the next game, not things that were specific to this one individual game that you'll probably never see again. So there is just fundamental parts of the game that are able to be carried forward, and I think that's why um, players can be high level for so long because they understand the fundamental parts of the game. I feel like if it was all just a bit random, then anyone could become good for one day and then the next day they're not good.
Yeah, that's it. Well, actually, is there any advice for any players who are coming for the scene that to be more consistent, to see more consistent improvement? Do you see any errors that players make in their training that you think maybe actually that probably isn't as necessary if you want to become good at the game?
Mm, well, I think all of it's just part of the process, really, and anyone will find their individual way of becoming good. The 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 key thing for me is that you just surround yourself um in the content, playing, watching, all of the sorts. If you truly want to become really good, you have to just like almost drown yourself within League of Legends content. And um, if you have like if you are as a person gonna have the chance to make it, then you will get there if you consume enough content and think about it enough. You'll start to understand the reason why things happen in the game, and then you can start actually making those decisions and start improving from there.
Yeah, I've had other players on the podcast that have talked about that they've actually found a benefit from bringing their experience of like martial arts into League rather than just like learning from League. You're saying there, like really immerse yourself in League, watch the Korean leagues and all those leagues to learn what they do. Is there anything additionally that you would do that's helped you?
Um, well, I'd say just having at least somewhat of a healthy lifestyle can help because if you spend all day being frustrated from your games, then you're never going to take anything away from it. You actually have to be in the right position to improve from your practice. And as long as you have that, I don't think there's much more you actually need to do. As long as you're in a position where the practice you do is going to be useful, then I don't think you need to add too much.
Mm. And it'd be good to talk around like the difference in lifestyle from competing at home online to going and competing and living abroad. Because you've lived abroad a few times, haven't you?
Yeah.
What were the differences in lifestyle there? And if there was a player who was setting out on a career now and they were going to live abroad for a period of time, what would you recommend to help them prepare for that lifestyle?
Well, if you're already a pro player from home, I don't think the lifestyle changes too much. It's just nice to have your teammates around you all like-minded, aiming for the same goal, really. I would say playing abroad depends on the team setup. Maybe they um, pay for your food, or maybe you have to go out and buy your own food. But I think that's the number one thing. Just know how you want to cook or know your meal setup because um, if the team doesn't do any of that for you, then that's probably the main difference that a player who's never lived on their own compared to living on their own will actually have to do, like the food and the laundry and all those sorts of things. Just you need to you need to stay on top of that, otherwise, um, you just start living in a bit of a cave if you don't stay on top of your responsibilities.
Yeah, I can imagine we've all had that experience where you live out on your own for the first time. You're like, oh my god, my parents used to do all this. What do you mean I've got to
Yeah.
find a place to do my washing? So, what about orgs? Is there anything that orgs could do that could contribute towards a gaming house that would make the setup better for players? 'Cause I've been with teams in the past where maybe the gaming houses weren't thought ahead of time about what the players need. From your experience of going across multiple, were there ones that you had better experiences, and was there particular reasons for that?
Um, well, the two of the ones I've been to in Spain with Bisons and with Movistar Koi, they were both really enjoyable. But I think a lot of the times it just depends on how the budget of the org is that you're playing for, because if you're playing for an org who can barely scrape by affording a gaming house, then you're probably not going to have as much luxuries like them paying for your shopping, or maybe you don't have aircon in your bedroom and then in the 35 degrees summer nights that you have to sleep in, then you're not going to have a very good sleep. Things like that. It's hard to know because you could, in theory, you could demand loads from the org, but if they don't have any money, then what are they actually going to be able to give you? But I had really good experiences in Bisons and Movistar Koi. I think part of that is because they had separated apartments and office. So you have to wake up, you have to make your way into the office, a bit of a commute rather than a gaming house situation. I think it gives a bit more of a healthier lifestyle.
Absolutely. No, great advice. And you're right. I think that orgs, like if they're going to put people in a gaming house, they'll be able to afford at least a decent setup, right? Just
Yeah.
benefit everyone, right? All right, great. And if we're going to talk about the role of a jungler for a second and the mental side of being a jungler, right? Because it's a unique position in League. What do you think are the mental um, challenges that you have to contend with playing a jungler role in a professional team?
Personally, I think being a jungler is quite taxing mentally because you're sort of, I mean, I'd say in modern League of Legends, the jungler is expected to be the early early game planner for sure, and then possibly mid to late game as well. That could be your role depending on the type of person you are. But there's I well, maybe this is a biased view, but I'd say the jungler has the most amount of things in the game that they have to contend with. Like all the variables in the game can affect you because your role is involving every single different character in the game. Whereas I'd say some of the other roles, maybe they're not as involved in the whole game in the early game compared to the jungler. I think it can be quite taxing because you just have to think about everything. And obviously, there's so many variables in League that it's not easy to think about everything, as well as being the one that usually has to make the decisions based on that because your role is the one that is thinking about everything, then your role is also the one that has to decide on what to do. Um, Obviously, it gets easier with experience because you start to see patterns between games, and then it's not as taxing on the amount of variables that you see. But yeah, there's always stuff that you are learning, and then you realize that you did a mistake, and um, it was your idea to do this play, for example. And yeah, I'd say there's just so much stuff to think about.
Sounds like there's a lot more responsibility on you for the team overall, isn't there? Because you've got to make decisions for the team, and so you've got to think about all these different factors that other roles might not, well, other roles wouldn't have to do, right? So it's almost like you've got split attention, haven't you? On the one side, you've got to focus on everything that's going on, and then you've always got to focus on yourself as well. So,
Yeah,
how have you
I
found?
mean,
Oh, go on.
uh, I don't want to say that other roles don't have to think much about the game, but I've never been a pro in any other role than jungle. Um, but just from my experience being on teams, I think a jungler does tend to be the one who has to contend with the most variables, specifically in the early game. I think all roles come to life a bit after the early game has finished and you're becoming a bit more one as a team. But yeah, in the early game, I think the jungler is the one who's making the decisions.
Mhm. How do you deal with that taxing nature of it? The fact you've got to take in so much information and then make decisions. Have you, over the course of your career, have you found ways mentally to make that easier on yourself?
Um, I think just the way to make it easier is just to become as good as of a player as you can be, because once you, the more you understand the game, the easier it is to make the decisions, because you can just, it's hard to explain, but you can just like see it easier. You can see the path forward easier. If you've, let's say you've watched like 100 Korean games of different examples, then you can actually analyze and understand why they do certain things. And when you come into your own game, then you can just take part of what they've done and then try to attribute it to your game. And I think just that's also what can motivate you to become a better player, because it just, the game can sort of play itself once you understand it.
Yeah. Oh, no, nice. Great advice. So my two final questions then. I call it like a mental key, right? Like I think from my experience working with loads of players, is that each had like a particular mental key that unlocks their potential, right? That one thing that they rely on mentally to get the best out of themselves. What would you say that mental key is for you?
Mm, I think, well, for me, I would say it's confidence, really, that when I'm playing well, or, and well, it's kind of a catch-22, because if I'm playing well, then I have confidence. But if I'm in the, if I'm, well, I guess it stems from being in a good headspace, um, being, having my life schedule set out well. But in game, when I have confidence that stemmed from good practice and good preparation, then I think that's when I'm by far playing my best, because my brain, I feel like, it doesn't dwell on any mistakes that have happened. I can move on quickly and think about what's next in the game, and I'm confident that the next play I make can be the winning play. But whereas if you're lacking confidence, then maybe you'll make a mistake and then just spend the next 1 minute thinking about how terrible that mistake was, or that you don't want to do that in the next game, but then you're giving up already on the game you're in.
Yeah, for sure. And like you say, your confidence there, like if you're confident, you're more focused on like opportunities rather than things that might go wrong. And that comes for you from what good training
Yeah,
and preparation.
yeah, definitely. When I have proven to myself that I've put in the hard work, that's when I get the confidence.
Great. Lovely. All right. And my final question is, if you were to give one bit of advice to your 12-year-old self, now looking back over your career to prepare them for what you were going to go through, what would that bit of advice be?
Hmm. Think just, I would say go through the journey, but enjoy it while you're doing it, because I nowadays I try to make sure I'm always enjoying the moment and enjoying the journey, but it's not always been, there's been points that are definitely up and down, but I wouldn't go back or change anything that's happened throughout my career, because I feel like it's all just played out, and I'm happy with how every decision I've made with intention, and in the moment it was the right decision. So I would just say to my 12-year-old self, yeah, just to embrace the path you're on and just be happy with how everything goes, because you do the best that you can, really.
Yeah, I love that. Embrace the decisions you make and embrace your career and enjoy it. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Be thankful for the career you have. Well, that's good in the chat because I'm really thankful for you and then for, giving us your time as well. And it's been absolutely fantastic. And some fantastic advice and wisdom in there for league players, but players across any game who want to become a professional or who already is a professional. If anyone wanted to watch you or contact you, where could they find you?
Um, well, my Twitter, which we were talking about earlier, is NoName EU West, and I guess that's the place where I'm most active to uh message or reply to people. But then I'll be playing in the Spanish league, which is streamed on Twitch at LVPES, I think it is. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure you can find it if you want to search up this Spanish Super League or on Google somewhere.
I'm sure many people will tune in to watch you, and best of luck with the next season as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.